Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As you can see from my presentation somewhere around here, okay, no problem. My name is Daniela Virdis, and I come from Italy, from the University of Cagliari. And I teach stylistics, pragmatics, and language and gender. And my seminar today will deal with stylistic, and in particular it's going to be an introduction to stylistics and to three key words in stylistics, three key concepts. So, and I'd like you to be as cooperative as possible to answer my questions and to take active part in this seminar in order for us all to enjoy it as much as possible. Now, I'll start by giving you a definition of stylistics. So, stylistics developed as a discipline some 20 or 30 years ago, and it was mainly linguistics as applied to literature. So, a linguistic study of literature. Now, it has developed mainly, I would say enormously, and you can perform a stylistic analysis of basically any text type, any genre. These are the key points. You have a linguistic description, so you have a text, you have a starting point, a point of departure, and you analyze that text from a linguistic viewpoint. You can't hear me. What shall I do? Shout? Or go on? Okay, fine. So, linguistic description. You have a text, you describe it from a linguistic viewpoint. Then, after you have done that, you try to interpret your text. So, why has the author chosen such linguistic devices, such linguistic strategies? Why is the text written in that specific way? We try to interpret that, and in the end, we tried to provide an evaluation. Was the writer a good writer? Was the poet a good poet? And so on and so forth. Okay. Now, so we can broadly define stylistics as the linguistic study of style. So, as I said at the beginning, of a literary text at the beginning, but of any text type, of any genre as a whole at large, an approach to the analysis of texts using linguistic description. So, for example, we may also take history or culture as a whole into consideration, but, as I said before, the starting point is linguistic. When we have the further steps in the stylistic description and analysis, we have to relate linguistic data, linguistic figures, via reader inference to the interpretation of meaning in as explicit a way as possible. Okay, so we have, for example, long noun phrases in a text, longer than usual. So why did the author decide to write longer noun phrases than usual? There must be a reason. So interpretation. And we have to do this as explicitly as possible. But this is just as way of introduction, and it will become clearer the further I go. Now, let's start from an example. Come, we burn daylight, ho, from Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, of course. Now, what's wrong or weird with this sentence here? What's unusual with this sentence here? Come, we burn daylight. So the seminar is about deviation. So what deviates, what is different, what is far from the norms of the English language? Any ideas? We have come, which is usual for come on, okay, in Shakespeare's language. Then, what do you have? We burn daylight.
Так, у меня просьба к аудитории. Берите микрофон и работайте. Вам вопросы дают. Мы здесь слышим, а вы сидите как статуи. Перед вами микрофон, рабочий микрофон. Пожалуйста, берите и работайте.
Мы думаем.
What should I do?
Аудитории вопрос задан.
What should I do?
Go on.
Go on. Okay, fine. So, no, you go on. What's the problem here?
I think that here we should use the present continuous instead of the present simple, not?
Okay, that's a possibility, exactly. We are burning daylight now, at the moment, but let's focus on the semantic level, not on the syntactic level. Semantic, so the level of meaning. What's wrong here? Can you physically burn daylight? No. What can you physically burn?
Some trash, probably.
Trash, okay. That's an unusual example, but that's perfect. Or we can burn paper, or oil, or wood, and so on and so forth. We can physically burn paper, wood, oil, and so on and so forth. We cannot physically burn daylight. Nevertheless, it does have a meaning. It does have a specific meaning. And this is how stylistics work. How do we get from the meaning of we burn daylight? How can we interpret this linguistic form? Okay, it's a metaphor in rhetorical terms, in traditional terms. And how can we interpret a metaphor? This specific metaphor here. Okay, I have another example, but right, no, I'll go on because we don't have time here. Okay. As we said before, we can burn paper and wood and coal and oil and fuel. This is called a normal paradigm for the lexical verb burn. Okay, a normal paradigm. What is normal, what is standard, what is not deviant from the norm. Okay, now we burn daylight is the abnormal paradigm. So abnormal. It presents deviation. It's non-standard, basically. Okay. Now, if we compare the normal paradigm with the abnormal paradigm, we will be able to interpret the metaphor. So, what happens when we burn paper? What happens when we burn wood?
You can see the fire.
Okay, you can see fire. And what about the paper? What about the wood? It disappears, okay, it's completely destroyed. And so we can make a parallelism, okay? So we have paper, which is completely destroyed, wood, which is completely destroyed, and so is daylight. So what's the meaning of the metaphor?
Maybe they even starts.
The day.
The day turned into an evening time.
Sorry?
The day is turning to an evening time.
Okay, the day is turning to an end, or we are wasting time. You know, in daylight, you perform most of your activities. Remember that this is Shakespearean English, so they didn't have electricity there, okay? So we burn daylight, we burn the most important and active part of our day, so we waste time. This is how we can linguistically interpret a metaphor. We build a normal paradigm, we build an abnormal paradigm, we compare them, okay? Now, we're at the linguistic level of semantics, linguistic level of meaning, okay? So this is called a semantic deviation. And in this case, we have an unusual collocation. What's collocation? Okay, the combinability of words. We know that burn combines or technically collocates with paper, wood, and coal, and burn doesn't usually standardly collocate with daylight, okay? So it's an unusual collocation. We can also have a paradox. So we have to infer, we have to derive, to infer basically an appropriate interpretation, and we have to use our knowledge of the English language. Then we have to use the co-text. What's the co-text? Co plus text, so the text surrounding a given piece of text. Sorry?
Well, you mean the context?
The co-text.
Uh-huh. All right.
So, oh, okay, you cannot see my PowerPoint, that's why. The co-text. Right, there it is. The co-text. So here we have, we burn daylight. That's the semantic deviation we are analyzing. In order to fully and completely analyze it, we have to take come, we, and ho into consideration. So come, we, and ho make the co-text. Okay, so the words surrounding the words we are analyzing. Okay, so we have to know the text we are analyzing. Then we also have to know the context. So we have to know that this sentence here comes from Romeo and Juliet, that Romeo and Juliet was written in the, probably at the end of the 16th century, if I get it right. Anyway, in a period when electricity hadn't been invented yet, okay? Then we have to rely on our knowledge of the world.
Я прошу прощения, stop it for a while. Вы видите презентацию, когда там показывают? Да?
Вот же, Тамара,
Да.
вот же еще у них. Вот
А зачем вот же, это для тебя?
А мне-то и пусть я смотрю, и так вижу, поэтому если им удобно, пусть они...
Ну, то есть иногда, когда она спрашивает что-то по презентации, ее нету. Ну, просто она не сразу появляется.
То есть надо дольше держать презентацию, да? Вы недопонимаете немножко, да? Да, все, спасибо.
I have my slides here, if you need them to make photocopies and to hand them out to the students. No, okay.
That'll be all right with this very presentation, with the screen. So
Okay,
it's fine, we can continue.
okay. Can I restart? Can I start?
You just
We-
continue.
Можно начинать?
Сейчас скажут.
Just a minute.
Just 2 minutes, okay.
You can go smoke.
Can I? No.
Daniela, we can continue.
Oh, great. Right. In order to get to an appropriate, a suitable, a reliable interpretation, we have to use our knowledge of the English language, of the context, and our knowledge of the world. Knowledge of the world is a technical term to indicate, you know, what usually happens in the world in a normal situation. So, for example, if you have fire and paper, you know what's going to happen to paper, okay? So that's our knowledge of the world. Now, we burn daylight is a linguistic deviation from the norms of the English language. And it's a linguistic phenomenon which has an important psychological effect. As a reader, if you read "You burn daylight," you stop for a second and you say, okay, there's something, I won't say wrong, but at least unusual, okay, deviant, non-standard. So the author requires me to stop and to provide an appropriate interpretation, an interpretation which is suitable to the co-text, to the context, to the knowledge of the word, and so on and so forth. If a part of a text is deviant, it becomes foregrounded. So we have two phenomena as in a mirror. Deviation is a linguistic phenomenon. Foregrounding is a psychological phenomenon created in the reader's, in this case, mind. Okay? So let's try to define foreground. Foreground and foregrounding, and the noun foreground, the verb foreground, the technical term foregrounding, they all derive from art criticism. What do they mean? If I say foreground, what does it mean? Art criticism. You've got a painting. Can you identify its foreground? Or, in this specific context, can you identify, okay, if you look at me in the picture there, what's, no, never mind. What's the foreground here and what's the background here? If you look at me there.
So if we can look at you, so our background is something at your back, so we can see a mirror.
Exactly.
And so a foreground is a table
Uh-huh.
and a laptop.
Okay, exactly. So the foreground in this case is the table and the laptop, and the background, okay, you cannot see it here, but it's, you know, the green screen there. And so which part is more important? Which part is more noticeable? Which part is most visually salient to you? If you see that picture there, what do you focus on?
Focus on the foreground, on
Okay.
table, laptop, and you.
Okay, exactly, exactly. So, this is true, this is perfectly true. Although the background is physically bigger than I am, you notice me first because I'm in the foreground. And you notice the computer because the computer is in the foreground, okay? And this is the same in literary texts, okay? Or in text types in general. What is deviant is foregrounded. What is deviant from the linguistic norms, from the linguistic rules, is more immediately salient, is more immediately noticeable, okay? The foreground, okay, that's fine, it's there. It's, you know, a starting point, it helps you out, but it's not what you have to work on, basically. So we have foreground versus background. In art criticism, the items in the foreground will usually appear larger than those in the background, as in this specific context here. And in stylistics, the background is what is linguistically normal, and the foreground is the portions of the text which don't conform to expectations, okay? When you read the verb burn, you expect it to be followed by paper and coal and wood and so on. Daylight is unexpected, okay? So you stop and you try to figure out an appropriate interpretation, okay? Now, deviation. In stylistics, we have different categories of deviation. Basically, we have deviation at every linguistic level. So, we said that we burn daylight, it's a problem with meaning, so semantic deviation. Here, pity this busy monster, man unkind not. Progress is a comfortable disease. These are the first two lines in a poem by Cummings, an American poet. And pity this busy monster, man unkind. Okay, that's the title of the poem in short. Now, let's focus our attention on the word man unkind. Anything unusual there?
Well, usually we have mankind or something, or just unkind.
Okay,
But
okay.
these are two words blended together.
Exactly, exactly. So we either have mankind, meaning humanity, or we have unkind, meaning the opposite of kind. So mankind is a noun in grammatical terms, unkind is an adjective in grammatical terms. Here we have a kind of a blending of the two meanings. So interpretation, that's the linguistic analysis. Now interpretation. What does it mean?
It means something not usual for human being.
Okay. So it's
Something not of the mankind.
well, that would be unmankind. Unmankind. Here we have man unkind. So we have man plus unkind. So it's humanity, which is, as a category, human beings are unkind. Exactly. So you take a word from the English dictionary, mankind, you transform it, because kind as a noun means type, category, okay? The type of human beings, the category of human beings. But as an adjective, it also means that you're a nice person, basically, okay? So you mixed these meanings together, and you have humanity as a group, as a species, which is not kind, okay? So we have a pun, a play on words, and we have created a neologism, so a new word, a word which didn't previously exist. And since we are dealing with words, it's a lexical deviation. Okay, we have created a new word. It's a lexical deviation. A deviation at the lexical level, at the vocabulary level. Okay, what's the time now? Okay, we have time. Another example. The Jolly Rogered Sea by Dylan Thomas. The Jolly Rogered Sea. Now, we have Jolly Rogered with final ed. We technically call it ed2 for the past participle, okay? Jolly Rogered, ed2, past participle. So here it works as an adjective, okay? But which word does it look like?
Jolly Roger.
Jolly Roger. And what's a Jolly Roger?
Jolly Roger is a character of the book.
No? Okay, it's the pirate's flag. Okay, you know, the one with the black field and the white bones. Okay, that's a Jolly Roger. So, it's usually spelt in two independent words. So you have Jolly and space and Roger, okay? Here you have the two words combined together. Then the two words turned into a lexical verb, and you know that because you have the final ed for the past participle here. So you have a word joined together and then transformed, turned into an adjective. That's the linguistic description, interpretation.
So here we can see the meaning of that the sea is inhabited by pirates.
Exactly. Is
under
it
the Jolly Roger.
okay?
flag.
Is it simply inhabited?
Not inhabited, somewhat, something like.
How many are there? The sea is Jolly Rogered. You see Jolly
Too-
Rogers everywhere.
There are too many.
Exactly. It's covered by Jolly Rogered. Okay? The Jolly Rogered Sea. The sea is characterized by a huge amount of flags, of pirate flags, okay? And consequently of pirate ships and consequently of pirates, okay? Again, it's a neologism, a word which didn't previously exist, a lexical deviation. Now, and more precisely, we also have a so-called functional conversion, as I said before. Jolly Roger, this is the usual spelling. First, a compound noun, so you join the two words together, then a lexical verb. Okay? Clear so far?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, other examples. Oh goddess, hear these tuneless numbers, rung by sweet enforcement and remembrance dear, by John Keats, Ode to Psyche. Now, any words or expressions you don't know? Sorry? Oh, you
Good.
no. That's a good point.
Can you read?
Okay. Oh goddess, hear these tuneless numbers, rung by sweet enforcement and remembrance dear, by John Keats' Ode to Psyche. Can you see the words on the screen? Are they
Yes,
big
we can
enough?
see.
Yes or no? If they're big enough, fine. Otherwise, I've got a bigger example. It's clear? Okay. Numbers here doesn't mean 1, 2, 3, okay? Numbers here is a poetic word for verses, okay? Rung is word written in a way. Okay. Now, remembrance, dear. Can you focus on that? There are many strange devices here, we can say. But let's focus on remembrance, dear. What's abnormal with it? What's wrong with it?
So the adjective comes after the noun.
Exactly. So, in standard English, we have adjective followed by noun. In this case, we have noun followed by adjective. Okay? So, you have tuneless numbers, adjective, noun. Sweet enforcement, adjective, noun. Remembrance, dear, noun and adjective. This is very usual in poetic language because of, you have reasons of rhyme and rhythm, okay? But it is also useful because it creates deviation and foregrounding. So, remembrance, dear, you have an emphasis on the idea of remembrance and on the fact that that remembrance is dear to the poet, okay? So, it gains special emphasis on tuneless numbers, for example, and on sweet enforcement. What kind of deviation can it be? We have seen semantic deviations at the level of meaning, lexical deviations at the level of individual words. Here, okay, at large, oh sorry, that's another example. Grammatical deviation. Grammatical deviation. You have a deviant word order, okay? And that's the same in the examples here. Then spake King Arthur to Sir Bedivere. Tennyson, Mort d'Arthur. What's wrong here?
Well, the case of the inversion, the exotic word order.
Okay, so can you rewrite it in standard English?
Then King Arthur spoke to Sir,
Bedivere, okay, great, okay. Then King Arthur spoke to Sir Bedivere. So you have the usual string, subject followed by
predicate.
King Arthur, which is the subject, followed by
A predicate.
predicate or predicator, exactly. Here we have the inversion. So what's emphasized? The action of speaking, okay. The action of speaking in standard English should follow. Here, the action of speaking is anticipated. So, since it's anticipated, it's, emphasized, it's highlighted. Tennyson is saying, reader, pay attention. What King Arthur is going to say is important, okay. Then you said, King Arthur spoke. Here we have spake. Spake is an ancient form of the verb speak, or better, of the past tense of speak, okay? You used to have either spoke or spake. Only spoke has survived into present-day English. So, this was written in the 19th century, of course. And in the 19th century, spake was no longer in use. So, why did Tennyson decide to use spake, which was no longer in use? So, Tennyson wrote Mort d'Arthur in the 19th century.
Maybe so we can drift into the period of King Arthur.
King Arthur. Exactly. Spake takes us back to the time of King Arthur. Okay, so it provides an archaic flavor. Okay, right. And again, you work with the grammar. You deviate the grammar from the norm. Little enough I sought, but a word compassionate. Boson exchanges. What's wrong here?
Again, the word order is
Okay, can you translate it, can you rewrite it, can you rephrase it into modern English?
little enough.
Exactly, I sought little enough. Is that all?
Probably there's something with but a word compassionate.
Exactly. Compassionate is an adjective. So?
But a compassionate word.
Okay, exactly. So you have two verses. Each one features a deviation and, as we said before, a grammatical deviation. You force, we can say, you force the grammar. You compel the grammar to be different and to mean, to convey something different and something foregrounded. Okay? So, deviant word order or reordering inside noun phrases and clauses to create extra meaning. Other examples, we have time, yes. Now, comings again. Perhapsless mystery of paradise. Perhapsless mystery of paradise.
Well, perhapsless is, well, it's strange. It should be perhaps, unless is a suffix of an adjective or of a noun.
Exactly, perfect. So, perhaps is an adverb, okay? And we usually use derivational suffixes to create adjectives. We don't add derivational suffixes to adverbs, my mistake, to adverbs. Less is a derivational suffix which we usually attach to, we have less, we usually attach it to, yes? Well, to nouns usually. Kindless. Yeah. For example, we have home and homeless. Okay. We have speech and speechless. Okay. So you have a noun plus the derivational suffix. So less is a derivational suffix for a noun, not for an adverb. So here you have an adverb followed by an unusual, a deviant derivational suffix. Now, this was the linguistic description, interpretation. Take the context into consideration. Mystery of paradise. It's quite a contradictory and difficult line of poetry. Because you have mystery of paradise. We don't know, okay, we may know what paradise is, okay? We can imagine what paradise looks like, but we don't know how it is exactly. You don't have a map of paradise, okay? So that's a mystery of paradise. You have perhaps, which means you have doubts. When you say, perhaps this is like this, it means that you have doubts. Less, you take those doubts away, okay? Perhaps doubts, you have doubts and you take those doubts away. So you have a series of contradictions here. So quite a mysterious, we can say, verse. Now, at what linguistic level are we working? Not exactly. We are creating a new word, exactly, but with an affix, so a prefix or a suffix in this case. So it's a morphological deviation. You add an affix to a word it wouldn't normally be added to. Okay. It's similar to lexical deviation, in this case at least. So morphological deviation, you play with morphemes, okay? And consequently, you play with words, because morpheme are the constituent parts of words. Now, other example, Kingdom of Daylight's Dolphin, Hopkins, The Wind Over. Kingdom of Daylight's Dolphin. That's the original spelling in the poem. What's the time? Yeah. Now, do you know who Hopkins was? Do you know who Hopkins was?
Not exactly.
Sorry? Not exactly. Okay. So, he was a religious poet who worked at the end of the 19th century. Okay? And The Wind Over, I'm sorry I don't have the Russian translation, but it's a bird which in this poem is used as a symbol for Christ, okay, for Jesus. The Wind Over is a bird, as far as I can remember, is quite a huge bird, and with its wings open, it looks like Christ's cross, okay? So it's a symbol for Christ in the poem. And this is a definition for Christ. Kingdom of Daylight's Dolphin. What's a dolphin?
As I'm not mistaken, that the dolphin is a person who is going to be a king.
Exactly, exactly. That's usually the king's son, okay? Yes. The king's or the queen's son, okay? And I don't know the Russian translation, but it's quite used in the French monarchy, for example. In the English British monarchy, we don't say dolphin. We say that in French, okay? What do you say in Russian?
In Russian?
Yeah, you have the Tsar, which is the king, and what's the technical term for the Tsar's son?
Tsarevich.
Okay, right. That's it. That's basically it. The dolphin, okay? Now, Kingdom of Daylight's Dolphin. Now, kingdom, you know what it means. It's the place, the state where the king has power over. But kingdom, written like this, you have emphasis on the word king, okay? And emphasis on the affix dom. Now, dom nowadays means nothing. In present day English, it doesn't have an independent meaning. It's just an affix. In this case, it's just derivational suffix, okay? But historically, etymologically, if you consider the etymology of the word, it means doom. What's doom? D-O-O-M. Sorry? No, not room, doom. Mm-hmm. Sorry? Destiny, exactly, yeah. And we have, yeah, right, it's your destiny, and it's also, sorry, I can't remember the word now. What's the final word, the final day in history? No, oh, okay, yeah, with doom. Doomsday, right, sorry, I didn't have the word. So doomsday, that's the day of judgment, the day of final judgment in Catholic religion for sure, probably in Christian religion as a whole, okay? So doomsday basically. You also have doomsday book in English, but that's different. So it's the day of final judgment, okay? Your destiny is set in that specific day. So you have the idea of king and the idea of destiny and of judgment there. And you only have these two separate ideas because of the spelling. Okay, otherwise the meaning of doom, of judgment, of destiny would have gone unnoticed. Okay, so yeah, morphological deviation, highlighting single morphemes through graphological deviation, in this case here. This is another example of morphological deviation. You highlight, you emphasize, you separate single morphemes. Last example of morphological deviation. I quite like this one. Nigel, Edwin, Edwin, Nigel. Anthony Burgess, the doctor is sick. Now, what can you recognize here? Yeah. What are these two mysterious words?
Seems like word play, word game.
Why? Sorry? Exactly. Are these words two simple words or something more specific? Nigel and Edwin are both it's like Daniela and Francesca, I'm mentioning my names, okay? So Nigel is a male name, a name for a man, and so is Edwin, okay? So Nigel, Edwin, Edwin, Nigel. Can you imagine a context for this utterance, for this sentence here? Take a look at my gestures. Nigel, Edwin, Edwin, Nigel. Yeah? Come
It's
on.
no matter who is going to be the first.
Sorry?
It seems like when they meet for the first.
Exactly.
And you are introducing each other.
Exactly. Okay, okay. So here we have a woman. She's introducing Nigel to Edwin and Edwin to Nigel. Okay, they meet for the first time. Nigel, this is Edwin. Edwin, this is Nigel. Okay, now, why are they written as a single word? What do you know about the woman uttering this sentence? Is the woman speaking slowly? Is the woman speaking fast? Sorry, she? Okay, she's in a hurry in a way. She's in a hurry. Okay. And
Maybe she doesn't. She doesn't. I don't know. Give attention to this. She just. She just does it because of her politeness.
okay, because she's socially obliged. That's an
Yes,
that's an
she's socially
explanation.
obliged and
Yeah.
But just for as a formal deal.
Okay. Okay. Exactly. Just as a formality. Exactly.
Formality, yes.
You got it perfectly right. The woman is in a hurry. The woman has to perform a social formality. In fact, Nigel is her husband and Edwin is her lover. Okay, so she's embarrassed indeed, and she wants to, bring the introductions to an end as far as possible. Okay? So, we know that she's embarrassed. We know that she's in a hurry, only because Burgess is a great writer and he decided to write the names of the two men in this way. Okay? It doesn't say the woman was embarrassed, the woman was in a hurry, but we, as clever readers, have inferred this from the morphological deviation. Now, we have here an example of running more than one word together as if they were one. Okay? Now, other example, I quite like this one. Love, said God. Say love. And you have a break here, and then a final try, said God. Now, love. Ted Hughes, Krauss, first lesson. Okay, now, let's focus on, okay, no, you tell me what we have to focus on. What's wrong here? What's unusual here?
The repetition of the word love.
Okay, first of all, we have repetition. When you have repetition in a text, pay attention, okay? So pay attention. The light is flashing, okay? The author is saying, please pay attention to this and interpret this. So we have the same word repeated 3 times. So, what about the first time? It's at the beginning of the sentence, so is it normal or abnormal?
Maybe the author tries to emphasize
the first time, love, we're at the beginning of a sentence. At the beginning of a sentence, we need a capital letter. So love is written with a capital letter. Is it normal or abnormal? Normal, okay. So you have a word at the beginning of a sentence. That word is normally written with a capital initial letter. Second occurrence, second example, love, written with, spelled with a capital letter. Is it at the beginning of the sentence? Yeah, exactly. It's the last word. Normal or abnormal? Abnormal, exactly. Now, the last occurrence. Can you describe it? It's all in capital letters. Normal or abnormal?
It's abnormal.
It's abnormal, okay. Now we have what we call a crescendo.
It's a musical term.
Exactly. So it's a technical term from music, and it's an Italian word, okay? But you know what it means because you have a great musical tradition here in the country. So crescendo. And we use crescendo also in linguistics when you have a basic form, then an improvement, okay? We have a crescendo here. So, first, love, normal. Second, love, 1 capital letter. Third, love, 4 capital letters. Okay? Now, Krau's first lesson. The co-text and the context. In the poem, God is teaching Krau how to speak. Okay? God, that's an unusual context. Okay? So God is teaching Krau how to speak and how to utter words correctly. Well, Krau is not the most clever of students, okay? Krau is very slow and lazy. And he doesn't want to learn how to pronounce the word love. Now, what can you infer from the text? What can you infer about God's attitude towards Krau? How would you read it? Sorry?
Well, maybe slowly at the first.
Okay, so it's a teaching situation, okay? A kind of a foreign language teaching situation. When a new word is introduced to the class, we usually emphasize it. Okay, we pronounce it with an emphatic stress, or we write it down and we ask the class to repeat it, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the pronunciation is emphatic. So how would you read it?
Love.
Okay, love, said God. Say, second.
Say love.
Say love. Okay, so 2 emphatic pronunciations. Now, you, as I told you before, you have a break here, and God tries to go on and on and on, but as I said before, Krau is useless as a student, okay? So, a final try, said God. Now, how would you pronounce it?
Now, love. Probably slowly.
Louder, probably, yeah?
I think we should pronounce the last word more intensively.
Yeah, okay. And probably we would add a little bit of tiredness to God's voice. Now, love. That's the final try, please. Okay. So, you have a spelling, we can say, a spelling crescendo, and you also have which is reflected in a phonological crescendo, okay? You have, you differentiate the three instances, the three occurrences from a phonological viewpoint. You pronounce these three words in a different way, okay? At the beginning, God is calm. Then it gets more and more annoyed. At the end, God is actually tired. A final try. Now, love, please. Okay. So, you have other example here. Now, sing each and all fortissimo a mer I blank ca I love you. It's Cummings again. Now, what's the difference between, okay, what's wrong here? Now, seeing each and all fortissimo, okay, fortissimo, that's another technical term from music, of course. America, I love you. Why is America, I love you spelled, written like this on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different lines? One line would have been more than enough. So why 7 lines?
Maybe just to show that it should be pronounced emphatically.
Exactly, exactly. So it reproduces an emphatic way of singing. You know, when you sing a traditional song or a national anthem, you pronounce it, you know, syllable by syllable, okay? You emphasize any single syllable and sound. So here you reproduce, this is a written text, this is not an oral text, so you reproduce the emphatic stress through a deviant spelling, okay? This is called, okay, we don't have time for this, graphological deviation, okay, graphological deviation, the written equivalent of phonological deviation, okay? You have a graphological deviation when you write. You write in a specific way because you want your addressees to read what you write in a specific way. So the graphological level, words on a page, reflects the phonological level, words when they are pronounced, when they are uttered. Okay? Now, what's the time? Yes, we still have some minutes. Last type of deviation. From God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. John Donne, The Canonization. Sorry? Oh, right, sorry. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. Now, this is a line of poetry. Is it clear in Russian? Okay, good. So, this is a line of poetry. In your opinion, from what part of the poem is it taken from? Okay, forget about the title, it's not useful here.
You mean middle or just
exactly. Is it from the beginning, from the middle, from the end?
I think it's somewhere in the end.
Okay, do you all agree or do you have other ideas? Okay, why? No, that's exactly. Seems like a conclusion. It presupposes what? For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love you. So it presupposes what? Two people are talking, okay? For God's sake, that's an expletive. You convey your feelings, okay? It's a discourse marker which we use to convey our feelings. Here, exasperation. hold your tongue, you hold your tongue, and let me love. So it presupposes two participants. It presupposes two people there having a conversation, okay? So either you say from the middle of the poem or towards the end, okay? Well, in actual fact, that's the very first line. That's the opening line of the poem, okay? Similar example. Yes, I remember Edelstrop. Thomas Edelstrop. Okay, as above. Opening line, middle line, closing line. From the beginning, from the middle, from the end. From the middle, okay, why?
Because it looks like the response on the question.
Exactly. Can you imagine the question?
Do you remember Edelstrop?
Okay. Do you remember Edelstrop? Yes, I do. I remember Edelstrop. Okay. So again, it presupposes one character and
another character.
and another character. Okay. It presupposes at least two characters interacting, at least two speakers, at least two participants. Okay. As above, this is the very first line. Okay. Why have these poets cheated us? Why have we all presupposed a dialogue, a conversation? This depends on what we call the prototypical discourse structure of poetry. The prototypical discourse structure of poetry. So, it follows the message model of communication. Are you familiar with the message model of communication?
No.
Okay, never mind. Now, what do we have we have a poem, okay, written by, sorry? An author, okay. So we have an addresser, okay? So someone who addresses, in this case, a poet, what? The poet is speaking, or in this case, writing what?
Yes.
By definition, a poet writes poetry and a poem. So a poem is the message. We have an addresser, the poet, conveying, communicating a message which is realized by the poem to a reader, okay, an addressee. Readers, sometimes, in the case of, poetry readings, listeners. Okay, this is the message model of communication. You have a poet conveying a message, which is the poem, to some readers. In our examples, this is completely different. We have a character conveying a message to another character. Okay, we have a character speaking to another character. And in both cases, in Don's case, we have probably a woman speaking and a man saying, please shut up, okay, and let me love you, okay? So, a dialogue, a conversation, an interaction between two participants is presupposed. And these two participants aren't the poet and the readers, but are two fictional characters. It's the same here. Do you remember Edelstrop? Yes, I do. It's not the poet speaking to the readers, but it's two characters inside the poem. Okay? So, prototypical discourse structure. The prototypical discourse structure of poetry here is deviant, is non-standard, is abnormal. So, it's a discursal deviation. Discursal deviation. At the start, we are projected into the middle of a conversation. In Latin, we say in medias res, in order to increase the sense of energy in the argument. Okay, it's like you open a door and you find two people fighting or having an argument. Okay, you're there, you're witnessing, and to create a conversational tone. Okay, so deviation at the level of discourse. It's not a prototypical poem. It's kind of theater, you know. As I said before, you open a door and you witness two people having an argument. Now, I've got one more slide. And the title of the lesson was Introduction to Stylistics, Deviation and Foregrounding, and Parallelism. We have introduced stylistics. We have seen the different categories of deviation at the different linguistic levels. Deviation creates foregrounding by definition. As we said, you stop and you say, why did the author write in this wrong way? There must be a reason. So you stop and you try to provide an interpretation of the linguistic characteristics of the text. Now, parallelism. Parallelism also creates foregrounding. Parallelism also forces you as a reader to stop and to find an interpretation. Here, but he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. From Isaiah's book, that's one of the books from the Bible, okay, so religious language. And Isaiah was a prophet, and he predicted the arrival of Christ on the earth, okay? Now, what can you notice here? Parallel construction, yeah, why? Can you describe this parallel construction, this parallelism in linguistic terms? Do you need any explanation for the words here?
What is transgression and the last word?
Okay, transgression when you break a rule. Okay, when you break a rule, that's a transgression. And iniquities, that's similar to transgression, but it means that it has a religious connotation. That's a sin, basically.
Я прошу прощения, аудитория, еще раз, пожалуйста, здесь у нас работают через микрофон. Если вы что-то говорите, пожалуйста, соблюдайте наши правила, отвечайте в микрофон. Иначе те, кто эту лекцию будет потом слушать и изучать, просто не услышат ваш вопрос и не поймут, о чем речь. Пожалуйста, в микрофон.
You can continue.
Okay.
It was for us.
It's not my fault. Okay, fine. Now, you have correctly identified parallelism here. Can you linguistically describe it? How is it linguistically created? Okay,
The repetition of the form.
Okay, right. So we have one sentence. How many clauses? Two clauses. Perfect. Can you describe the structure, the grammatical structure of these two clauses? They both start with
The subject.
Okay, the subject realized by the personal pronoun
He.
he. So you have he and he, followed by
By the passive construction.
okay, the passive voice was plus ed2.
Yes,
Okay, past participle.
and in the first and in the second clause, so we use the passive construction in the past.
No, that's basically the same. You have was, and you have wounded and bruised.
Yes.
That's past participle in both cases. Okay? So the parallelism is perfect here because you have was, which is past tense, and ed2, past participle in both cases. Okay? Then what else?
And for hour is repeated.
Okay, for hour is repeated. What else is repeated?
Objects.
Okay, yeah, the direct object. No, it's not a direct object here, but
Prepositional.
no,
For.
okay. transgression is is it in the singular or in the plural?
It is in the plural.
In the plural, and so is
Iniquities.
iniquities. So you have for our plus noun in the plural form. Okay, so the structure is he was, verb past participle, for our noun in the plural. Okay, in both cases. Now, let's analyze the meaning of, so what changes is basically the lexical verb and the noun. Okay, everything remains the same, both the lexical verb and the noun. Now, let's analyze the meanings of the lexical verb and of the noun, wounded and bruised. What can you tell me? Are they similar? Are they different?
They're similar.
They're quite similar, okay? They're quite similar. Transgressions and iniquities.
Also the same. They're similar.
Okay, they're also similar. So, what do you basically have? The same idea? You have one sentence, two clauses, the same idea?
The same idea expressed by different lexical lexical meanings.
Perfect. Okay, you have the same idea repeated twice. Okay, the very same idea repeated twice through different words. These words vary just a little bit. The meaning is basically the same. Okay, why do we have the same idea repeated twice? Wasn't once enough?
No.
It's normal for biblical text.
Okay, it's probably normal for biblical and religious language.
Yes. And firstly, in the first case, we say about just crimes which are not religious.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
the next we are emphasizing the religious crimes. Sins.
Exactly. Okay, that's a good point. So we have the same idea repeated twice. Okay, that's because of the genre. So religious writing, biblical writing. But that's also to emphasize again, to foreground this idea. Okay, we people are sinners. Jesus Christ will come to save us. That's the biblical message. And since the same idea is repeated twice, we are great sinners. Okay? That's it, basically. Now, we don't have time for this example, but parallelism, this is how parallelism works. We have some linguistic features which are held constant, usually structural features. So here we have he, which is a personal pronoun, was, which is an auxiliary verb, for, which is a preposition, our, which is a possessive, and so on. Usually structural features are constant, while others, lexical items, are varied. And here we have lexical items, wound, bruise, wound become bruise, transgression becomes iniquity. Okay? It reinforces the meaning, it catches the eye. Here Isaiah, or the author of the biblical book, is saying, you reader, stop and interpret this. Okay? In fact, we have the so-called parallelism rule for interpretation. We have to search for meaning connections between the parallel structures. In our specific case, we have just found out that wounded is almost the same of bruised, and that iniquitous is almost the same as transgressions, but iniquitous is slightly more religiously connoted, okay? In particular, in terms of the parts, which are varied. Now, this was the last slide. I forgot to tell you that this lesson was mainly based on this very important book by Mick Short, Exploring the Language of Poems, Plays and Prose. which was published by Longman in 1996. Now, Mick Short is one of the founding fathers of stylistics as a discipline. And as I said before, of the discipline which tries to analyze literature from a linguistic viewpoint, okay? And which now can be applied to any text type, any genre. This is a textbook for students, but it's extremely useful for scholars and lecturers too, because it's extremely rich, okay? And this lesson here was derived from the first part, the part about poetry. But you can find these linguistic features in any text type. For example, do you remember the Edwin Nigel example? That was from a novel. And basically, poems, plays, and prose, linguistic foregrounding, linguistic deviations are extremely useful in poems, in plays, and in prose, and also widely used in poems, in plays, and in prose. So, thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure for me to be here with you, and I thank you not only for your attention, but also for your active participation. It was a pleasure for me to be here today with you. Thank you.
Thank you too.